And I want to bring in Congressman Adam Schiff, Democrat from California and senior member of the Intelligence Committee. Congressman, good to see you as well. I want to start with a poll that finds 40% of the American people want airstrikes only in Syria, while 34% think we should conduct airstrikes and send in combat troops. You just wrote an op-ed just a couple of days ago arguing that airstrikes won't work in Syria. Why?
Well, if you look at the airstrikes that we've undertaken in Iraq, they've been successful because we've had ground forces that could come in and take possession of the Mosul Dam, that could come in and protect Erbil. So we work with the special forces, the Peshmerga. We don't have that in Syria. So if we displace ISIS from holding certain ground, who will fill that ground? Will it be al-Nusra, which is the official Al-Qaeda franchise in Syria? Will it be Bashar al-Assad's forces and allow him to concentrate his military power against the so-called moderate rebels? Will it be Hezbollah? And unless we can answer those questions, and the answers are somehow moving us forward, I think airstrikes in Syria are premature. There may be some very limited targets that might make sense if we had a fix on some of the senior leadership. But the challenge there is we don't have the intelligence on the ground in Syria that we do in Iraq.
And the other challenge, of course, is that Syria has defense mechanisms. It's clearly not happy with the Americans doing anything inside of its territory. How do we handle the issue of, you know, and we've talked, you and I have talked about this in the past. I mean, there's a possibility of mission creep, and there's also the possibility that it just could create more problems rather than less.
Well, there is that very real risk. And in terms of the regime, if we were doing airstrikes that went after ISIL targets, I can't imagine that the Syrian regime is going to try to stop that. They would love to see us do that. On the other hand, if we used our air power to go after the regime itself, that would be a completely different story. But even in those limited cases where we were going after ISIL, if we have a pilot that goes down, if we have someone that is taken prisoner and is subject to that kind of gruesome beheading that we have seen with our American journalists, you can imagine how that would further pull us in and enrage the American people and draw us into this messy civil war. So these are very difficult, dangerous repercussions, and the chance of mission creep is extraordinary.
So if the president asks you to authorize, for example, arming some Syrian opposition folks, would you support that?
Well, that's something I'm wrestling with. I haven't made a decision. I have to say I've been skeptical because I'm not confident that the weapons we would provide would stay in the right hands, that they wouldn't ultimately get into the hands of ISIL, as we have seen in Iraq, where a lot of the American-made Humvees, tanks, anti-tank weapons, etc., were taken over by ISIL when they conquered territory. So I would want some level of confidence that they're going to the right people, they're going to stay with the right people. It's hard for me to see that happening.
What do you want to hear the president say tonight?
Well, I'd like him to lay out the case to the American people about why ISIL is a real threat, and it is. But also, what is he going to ask of the American people? What are we going to be exposed to in terms of risk to our troops? And if we are going to go to airstrikes that go beyond what we're doing in Iraq or move across the border into Syria, how is that going to further the mission? Those are the kind of things I'd like to hear him talk about, what that international coalition will look like. I think he's going to keep it tactically only a broad outline, but I think he'll go into more granularity in terms of the coalition he wants to build and why there's an imperative that we move against this threat.
You know, when ISIS beheads an American, they don't care if he's a Republican or a Democrat, a liberal or a conservative. Do you think it's possible that on this issue of such importance to all Americans, the House and the Senate can put aside petty politics and really get together to deal with this?
I certainly think so, and I would hope so. I'd like to see that come together around a narrow authorization to use force. I think Congress has a constitutional obligation to weigh in here. It's a difficult challenge, though, because you have some wanting to go much farther than the president will advocate. Some would like to see even boots on the ground in Syria. Others that would like to see a very carefully cabined limited time duration so Congress can continually weigh in on this. So navigating those two poles will be a challenge, but it's nothing we shouldn't be able to accomplish. And there is, as you say, a broad consensus that the threat is real and we've got to work together to defeat it.
Congressman Adam Schiff, always a pleasure to see you and to speak with you. Thanks so much for being with me this morning.
Jose.